Hey, gang, guess what?
It's Humpday Happy Hour with Dennis in the Know. Nice lead in, Chad. So I apologize for the bad lighting, but I'm in a hotel room and I am so pumped up about dentistry right now because I'm down here at what was started by Dr. Mark Piper and the Piper Clinic and all of his great teachings and the great surgeries that went on down here has now been taken over by Dr. Brian Shaw. And happened to have a patient coming down here for surgery. And I was like, okay, this is spring break. I'm going down. I'm going with my patient. I'm going to watch the surgery. I'm going to watch 3 other surgeries. I'm just immersing myself in the TMJ surgery world. And so I'm just totally pumped up on dentistry right now. Really excited. But welcome to Hump Day Happy Hour and welcome to Dentists in the Know. This is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It is live and it is over whatever is in my room, which is a bottle of Jim Beam Black and the ice bucket taken from the ice maker, but it is what it is. Anyway, as usual, I am with my best friends in the world and amazing dentist, Dr. Jennifer Bell and Dr. Chad Duplantis. And you know the routine. We are all regular dentists. We are all practice owners. And we are all trying to bring you in the know. That's our job. That's what we're going to have fun doing tonight. We have an unbelievable guest. I want to tease that even before JB talks. We have Dr. Matt Burton tonight, who is the inventor of the Versa Wedge, but just more important than that, just a great guy, great dentist. Forget the fact that Troy Schmetting told us that we needed to meet this guy. I mean, we know that you've got to be careful about any recommendation from Dr. Troy Schmetting. No, honestly, Dr. Schmetting is an unbelievable guy. Introduced us to Matt, and so I can't wait for you to hear from him. But JB, go ahead and do the news, and we'll introduce Dr. Burton after you're finished.
Well, then let's get to it. So, not a ton of news. I have to remind you one more time that the open comment period for the modifier and enhanced CDT code discussion is closing at the end of the month, so March 31st. So if you or your loved ones have a passion about where the CDT code book is going, how this may start to morph or change into looking a little bit more like an ICD code book, now is your time to get your voice heard, either through organizations that you participate in or on your own. There are mechanisms through the ADA to get your voice heard. You have 2 days left to let them know, to review the suggestions and the context. So certain things like what types of materials you used for the crown fabrication, what the diagnosis code may be attached to that to justify the crown fabrication. All of those things are being discussed in this enhanced CDT code discussion. So if you want to participate, you have 2 more days to get your voice heard. I do think there'll be additional opportunities, but that may be more into the development of what this will look like as opposed to whether or not this is a good idea. So now is the time to get your voice heard on that. An interesting thing came out just this week from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services National Toxicology Program. They are re-looking at fluoride. There's been a lot of debate more recently about it being a neurotoxin and having neurodevelopmental effects. And so there have been some reviews of fluoride and looking at how it's being used in the general population. They did reverse or pull back some of the hazardous classifications of fluoride, but they have not made a full statement yet in relation to the neurodevelopmental effects in humans. So I do think that we should be sitting a bit in pause. This pullback on the classification of hazardous material may mean that a new standard or a new communication about fluoride is about to come out from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And we may need to relook at the different programs that we deploy, how we do fluoride supplementation in our practices, fluoride application. Now it's being applied both in pediatric medical offices as well as general dentists and pediatric offices. So I think they're starting to look at what thresholds, what exposure risks, and what levels would create a toxicity to humans. So I think it was pulled back for a reason, because I think some additional comment is about to come. Another paper that came out this week from the American Dental Association Journal, or JAMA, discussed, and this could be a fun, interesting debate between the three of us, discussed, is it time to go to a consolidated degree designation? So as you know, in dentistry, we have both DDS and DMD. As I understand it, and for those fact checkers out there who watch me on a regular basis, feel free to correct me. But DDS was the original designate, or Doctor of Dental Surgery. And then when Harvard came online, didn't like how DDS, or Doctor of Dental Surgery, sounded in Latin. So they changed it to the DMD designation to be more eloquent when they confer their degrees in Latin. And then when Harvard moved to DMD, many other schools fell in suit because they wanted to look and be as cool and sophisticated as Harvard. So now we have this big dichotomy of DDS and DMDs out there doing the same types of dentistry. And there has been discussion, how does the public see DDS versus DMD? Is a DMD more qualified than a DDS, or vice versa? So there is some discussion. There's a little bit of heat. There's a little bit of momentum going towards a unified degree designation. Seems like DMD may be pulling ahead slightly, but we'll keep you posted as to what develops beyond that. And with that, that's the news.
Matt, welcome. We have Dr. Matt Burton with us tonight, and Matt came to us thanks to our amazing friend, Dr. Troy Schmedding. We are all mutual friends, and we actually kind of got to chat with each other at the Align booth when we were at the Chicago Midwinter Dental Meeting, and we knew Matt was a perfect fit for the show. The second that we met him, we're like, this guy is one of us for sure. So let me just tell you a little bit about Matt, and then we'll get right into it. Matt has been a dentist since 2008, and like all of us, after getting into practice, kind of struggled with Class II composites and matrix systems and contacts and flash and all the stuff that we all struggle with. And so rather than continue to have a hard time, he put his head down and actually developed his own matrix system, which is now known as the Versa Wedge. And thank you for doing that, because what an incredible addition to dentistry, solving a big problem for a lot of dentists who felt the same way that you did. But on top of that, Matt has also developed this practice, has started lecturing on forward thinking, on software implementation, on 3D data, and how software integration needs to move forward for scanning data. And he's been teaching since 2020. Great guy, great dentist. Forget about the fact that he came from Troy Schmedding. Matt, we are just so excited to talk to you, and thanks for being on the show.
No, I'm thrilled to be here. This is awesome. So when you said that we met in the iTero booth, that I was sitting here listening to you guys open up, and I thought back to that moment when I was there, and I was actually checking out iTero's. They just released this thing called Smile Architect, which is like a 3D visual mechanism that can pretty quickly like design smiles and give a patient an actual look. It actually matches their tooth color and all this stuff. It's fascinating. But my rep was there, and he was all excited to show me. And So he's showing me, and one of his colleagues is showing me, and midway through, I catch out of the corner of my eye, I hear something, and I look to my right, and it's Troy, and he sees me, and I see him, and then, you know, we say hi, and then I meet all you guys, and then like 20 minutes of like joking and banter just goes by. And I turn around, and I realize my rep and his colleague they're still standing there at the screen. And I'm like, oh my God, Justin, I'm so sorry. Like, let's get back to it. Like, I'm into this, but, you know, never met you guys before, but like you said, it was an instant hit for sure. And I don't think anyone had been drinking at that time yet either. So
no, not even a drop.
No, we were just hanging around because we heard that there were going to be cookies and brownies. And you know what's funny is, like, I was like, if I'm in this booth for this long, I'm taking a damn cookie. And I was cleaning out my briefcase yesterday, and I found a cookie in there. It's a month old now. But the sad part is there wasn't an ounce of mold on it because it was one of those damn sugar cookies. Probably tastes the same as it did that day, you know? So
yeah.
Hell, they may have made it a month before. I don't know.
They brought it from the last trade show.
A line's in town. Ice the cookies from January. So, anyhow, but yeah, it was awesome meeting you. And Troy is just such a great guy. We really have a fondness for the Schmedster. So
yeah, I love him. I met him.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and disclose the fact that he tried to hit me up on Instagram today to get a finder's fee. I'm not kidding. He said, "What's my credit? Do
Tell
I
him
get
when
some
we
kind of
start
finder's fee?"
making some money that we might consider that.
Yeah.
No, I said you get 20% of zero.
Yeah.
Where should I send the check?
He told me I was getting paid to do this. I thought that.
Oh.
Joking.
Hey,
Oh,
dude,
you're
the check's
done
in the
now,
mail.
too.
The check's in the mail. Seriously, don't worry about it.
You are free to bail.
123
problem.
Fake Street. Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
where do you practice, Matt? You're in Chicago, right?
Yeah, just south of Chicago. So I live just west of Chicago, and I have a practice just south in a little town called Frankfort, Illinois.
Okay. And
So-
you've been there since 2008-ish?
2008. So it's kind of a cool story. One of my instructors, she was one of my operative instructors in dental school, and love her. She was one of my favorite people. And her and her husband used to work at this office, and then she had developed carpal tunnel early in her career, and so she went to teaching, and then she was like my lead instructor my senior year, and she pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I know this great practice. This guy, you know, he's going to want to retire soon." So she connected me with him, and so I went down there, and then like 8 months, I think it was 8 or 9 months later, he just came in and said, "You want it? It's yours," you know, and sold it to me. And he was actually an artist for the PGA, and he still is. So he paints for the PGA at all the majors and does all that. So he was busy with that, and that was always like his true passion, but he was a great dentist. So the office, I think the office turned 75 years old. And so it was a doctor, the original doctor for 30, this other guy for 30. And then this is my 15th year. So it's pretty unique. We have patients in their, 70s and 80s, and it's the only office they've ever gone to, but we've, continued to grow with the growing community. So it's a cool spot.
That's really awesome. And then, so you get out, and then when did you decide that you were fed up with the current matrix systems?
Oh, that was like 6 years ago. And, it was, it was in 2017. But when I left dental school, that's another interesting thing, is that our boards were amalgams when I graduated still. So it was, right at that transition point, there was a lot of evidence-based dentistry, like, like from the horn, right? Nonstop, where they were just like, don't do composites. And we had some instructors saying like, you've got to, but I kind of emerged into private practice right at that time. So I kind of realized I was behind. So I took money I didn't have and maxed out a credit card that I couldn't afford, and took like Bob Margis's course at Cosmodent because it was local, and took a couple-day course with him. And then Jason Smithson from the UK as well, like phenomenal class 2. He was like at the beginning just making these beautiful class 2s. And I was just like, I can't even wrap my mind around this. But took a couple of classes, and I still use a lot of their their techniques today, but it was important and helpful with me at the beginning because everything was just like a washing machine. They're like, use this, you won't get sensitivity, but don't etch the dentin because that's gonna kill the tooth. And just everything was just going in every different direction. So we were all just trying to, figure out our own path.
So tell us a little bit about what you decided to do. And I'll start with this because I'm a little bit older than you. I'm a little bit older than JB. I'm not as old as Jeff. But my first class 2 composite, I mean, I had done class 3s, class 4s, class 5s, but my first class 2 composite was in residency. And I will never forget because we didn't have a matrix system. We had Toffelmeyers and wooden wedges. And that class 2 composite took me 3.5 hours to complete on like tooth number 12. And I was like, holy shit, is this ever going to get easier? So, tell us what you did.
And it still had an open contact.
Yeah. And
it still failed. He did a root canal on it.
Yeah, it's still
the sad part is JB is correct. I still had an open contact. Okay. And today I'm still trying to figure out how to make that Toffelmeyer work.
Actually, I'm putting an implant at that tooth next week.
Yeah. Him and
that's
Lawrence
my new
Welk
conversation.
work
If
on
I
my
struggle with the
patient.
if I struggle with the class 2, I'm like, I'm really sorry. This tooth was not meant for composite. You get an implant.
He's going to go work on my patient LW and place an implant. A really long one. So good.
No, I'm sorry. What was the question? I forgot. I was laughing so hard at you. What was the?
I don't know. It was something.
Dad talked for so long. What was the?
It was
How old
like-
do I think Jeff is?
All right. It was like, so what did you do to combat your frustration with the Toffelmeyer and open contacts?
Sure.
Yeah.
How did you come up with VersaWedge? Let's just throw it out there like that.
Let's throw it out there.
Let's tease it a little bit, Jeff. Come on.
You tried, but you failed epically.
You know what got my attention was I literally have like a graveyard of every matrix system ever made almost in my office because each one was saying, use this ring, use this ring, use this ring, right? Like this is going to solve this problem. This is going to solve that problem. And what I realized when I was doing all these things, like, yeah, in an ideal situation, they all work. But as soon as you pass the threshold of like a width or a depth or a combination of both, then like the wheels just fall off, right? And so it didn't matter what ring I had. There was never a solution, never a streamlined process. And then I started to break it down and I actually took the ring out of the equation and I did ringless composites for like 6 or 8 months, like literally found ways to make a wedge work. And to prove to myself or find the ways that, like the ring's not the issue. It's more, there's more to it than that. And it's more matrix stabilization than it is actually like that ring separating. And like, we just expect to put this thing on there and like magic's going to happen. Right. So then I took it a step further and I thought, all right, well, like where does shizzle hit the fan? Right. And
we've already dropped the S-bomb. So
once the gates open, like we can all run through. This is great.
Yeah.
So where does it hit the fan? And the matrix insertion was like never really a problem. I mean, it's never fun to get them in certain areas, but you can get it in there and you can get it like tucked in and everything was fine. But as soon as you put the wedge in, that's when stuff started to get weird, right? So you either puncture the papilla or you collapse your matrix band. So I started looking at the matrix in steps instead of just saying matrix, wedge, ring, right? That's kind of what we were taught to do in dental school. We weren't really taught why we do things, which I think is like kind of a problem. We're not really taught why we do the fundamentals or the fundamentals of what we do. We're taught a system. We're taught how to do it. That's what they teach us. And if you don't understand why you're doing something, then you're not going to be able to fix problems along the way, right? Like if you run into errors or different situations. And so I started like stepwise checkpointing to see what was happening and where. And what I realized was that the wedge was a major component to it. And so one morning I woke up at like 4 a.m. with this idea and I really was like frustrated with it. I'm like, what could we do to make this better? And I just woke up and said, what if it splits in half? And so I went downstairs and I drew it on a piece of paper on my kitchen island, in the house or the condo that my wife and I lived at the time. And I think we had 2 girls at that time. Our second was a baby. And I went to work. I couldn't even wait. And I just got in my car and drove to my office at 5:30 in the morning and just dumped all the wedges out on the table and was like, how can I try this, test this? So my best bet was to take a Triodent wave wedge and then just start cutting them in half with a 15 blade. So I'm super happy I still have this guy, right? After trying to split wedges in half. But one thing led to the other, and I started realizing that instantly, things just started changing, and it was kind of an aha moment. And I stuck with it, and formed my own company. And it's tricky to get new dental devices out in the market, especially ones that make a difference. And it's just been a game of patience and just slow as you go and find the right people and keep pushing forward. So.
That's what I really wanted to understand, because a lot of folks have great ideas, whether it's a dental idea or you're a parent. You've probably come up with a few things. You're like, man, if they could just invent something that would make X thing a lot easier in raising my kids or whatever. We've all had those moments. It's the conceptualization on your kitchen counter to getting it into production. Can you talk us through a little bit of that journey? What does that really look like, and who do you have to get to know? And do you just go on like a third-party website and look for designers who will do plastic product prototypes, or what does that look like?
All the above. It looks about like how you don't know how it looks. Honestly, there's no playbook for it, and it's the most challenging thing I've ever done. And the really cool thing about that is when you do something like that, and even just to get it to market, right, and to get it in people's hands and have people using it, and I get to meet people like Troy, and then I meet people like you, which is that's the best part of all of this. It was it's been reinvigorating, but back to that, it's just to get it to that level was so much work. It was 4 years of work. And all the way from patents, I walked into the patent office just strutting my stuff like I got an idea, right? And my patent attorney was quick to say hey, this is the easy part, and I didn't believe him. I thought he was full of it. So I went home and started looking it up, and I think it was Thomas Edison. I think he holds the record for individual patents in the world. And his comment was, it's the patent's 5% of the idea is 5% of the work. And then the 95 is the rest of it. And I just started Googling plastics manufacturers across the world. And I interviewed people all over the world. And, of course I sent out maybe 50 inquiries and got 4 people to respond. And then from that, whittled it down. And I actually found a guy right here. He's 20 miles away from me, that I ended up connecting with. So they're made here in Chicago.
Wow.
Which was, it was
cool.
Perfect. And it was imperative when we were trying to figure all this out. But then you get to the level of making something that small, because everything we use is obviously so tiny, and it has to be very specific. And so these engineers were looking at me like I had a screw loose, how big is it? Can it be thicker? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It can't be thicker. And so it was quite a journey for sure. And like I said, the most challenging thing, I'm not a DMD though, so I don't know, maybe that's more challenging than that. So.
You would have gotten it done a lot faster if you'd been a DMD. Yeah.
So I'll share with you a quick story, and this is really meant to congratulate you on your idea. But when we were in dental school, one of my best friends in dental school grew up as an electrician, and he worked in the oil fields before he got into dental school. So we're going through our endo rotation, and he comes up with this fantastic idea for this broken file retriever. So he draws it up, and then we had this other guy that used to work in the oil field, and he was an engineer prior to becoming a dentist. And he's like, oh, I'll put together, some real eloquent drawings or whatever. And he pitches this to a couple of endo supply companies. So our junior year, an endo supply company flies him to where they are. And if I said that, it would probably give the company away. He goes in with all of his drawings, and this guy's like, I am going to be so rich, man. I got this idea. I've got the drawings. I've got this. I've got that. Well, the whole thing is that they had already had this concept, and they thought that he was basically poaching their idea. And so he comes back to dental school like 3 days later, and he's like, everything's completely deflated. He's like, yeah, it already exists. And they basically were doing recognizance on me, and it's not going to work out, but it's like, kudos to you for coming up with something. And, you've got so many things that are so close. And I love the design of this. I mean, it's really kind of sexy to say the least. It's just the way that it flares out. I mean, it's got to work. And kudos to you for wrapping your head around it and actually making it work and following it through from that conceptualization.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
that's really awesome.
Matt, let me ask you this, because we had a question come in from someone who's watching, Chris Robinson. And first of all, maybe describe a little bit about the concept and what the important parts are about it, how it's different maybe than conventional matrix systems. But Chris's question was, specifically, once the wedge was placed, what do you do to close the space between the matrix and the tooth to eliminate the flash, both on the buccal and lingual surfaces? So
that's a great question.
Maybe talk a little bit about how the system works and then how you address that particular problem.
Sure. And so one of the major weaknesses of like all ring systems currently is that they have to be, like they're universal, right? So the pads are on both sides because we have to be able to put them everywhere. But the lingual anatomy and the buccal anatomy are they're like black and white, right? They're totally different. The buccals are much more flat. The linguals have these weird, curvatures and quick emergences, especially when you're in the first molar bicuspid. The molar stays pretty flat, but the bicuspid immediately starts to turn. And so all of our wedges were linear too, right? Like everything was a straight line. So you're trying to go in between all these teeth and you don't know which way that wedge is going to lean. And so a few things. One is that the ability of the wedge to split is it allows it to glide around the papilla, and it uses the papilla as back pressure. So a lot of people are like, well, that's not strong enough. But it's like, well, if you use what's already there and you just put pressure against it, then sure, it is, and so you slide it in, the papilla goes right in the middle and the wedge stays low. And why that matters is that if you have a wedge that's crowned at the top, like so, and the papilla is up here and your margin's down here, then when you put it in, that wedge is going to float on top of the papilla. And so if you've ever ended up with like dented margin, or, you could see your wedge was impacting your matrix band at that gingival margin, that's what it was. It was not that you placed the wedge wrong. It was that it had nowhere to go. And so by having the wings independent of one another, they can actually, move up and down depending on where they're at, but they can stay low right along the margin. And what I found that did as well is that it kept pressure off the matrix band. And this is where it gets hard to describe like on video, but if you've got a tooth and you have your matrix band like so, and they're butted up to each other, and you place a wedge in between, and that wedge starts to pry your matrix band away from your tooth like so. Okay. So then you put your ring on and you kind of have a leaning contact, and you get light contacts, and people think, oh, that ring doesn't work. And it had nothing to do with the ring, nothing at all. It was the wedge that literally just split your matrix band off of your tooth. And so by sitting it low, it allows those matrix bands who have those contours now, especially the sectionals. I know Chad's still using Toffemeyers. That's fine. And, they have the contours that are ready to go. And so it leaves it alone.
He's using his assistant's finger. Like it's,
That's awesome.
it's actually not even that sophisticated.
A little harder.
She's like holding like this, and he's packing against it.
That's awesome. I'll send you a free kit, Chad.
Mm-hmm.
But it stays low. It allows the matrix band to do its thing. And it's as simple as that. It's crazy. It's that simple.
So my next question is that if you had to choose, what are your favorite wedges?
Versa wedges.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I thought that's what I was hearing, but I just wanted to make sure. No.
Close seconds, the original wooden ones, like you said, the sycamores that we had to use in dental school. Those are great. Whittle.
Yeah. The dude abides.
The dude abides.
The dude
yes,
abides.
You read my email last night. That's awesome.
I'm just saying, anyone out there will get that if they are a big Lebowski fan.
Okay, so now we have part 2 of the question. And part 2 of the question is, I can see how that would work at the gingival portion of the box, but what about the occlusal portion of the prep?
So
is that where you rely on the band?
That's where you rely on the band, but there's a part that I didn't get to. So the wings that split through, the one side you have the handle, and that's usually on the buckle. So when you put your ring over the top of that wall is usually pretty stable. And even if we get a little bit of buckle flash, like we can reach that, right? But the lingual part is the real bear. And so when those wings pop through, they split open like so. And then if you can imagine, like if you're looking down from the chewing surface, and this is like the V ring going into the wedge like this, it goes in between these and it pulls the wedge apart, and it'll actually pull it around the margin. And I'll get to the occlusal surface in a second, but it'll pull it around the margin like a belt around your waist. And what that does is it stabilizes the whole matrix. So then the ring can, like, it engages the Versa wedge instead of just smashing the matrix bands, which they do often. And it can lean against the occlusal surface without impinging on, where the matrix band goes. So by stabilizing it at the base of the filling, you're actually stabilizing it all the way up. Now, if you take a burnisher and you like push on it, it's like, sure, yeah, you can move anything. But it's pretty fascinating how that little simple thing is just made a huge difference in my productivity and others as well.
So with this wedge system, do you have like an only bands page?
I love it. No, but I'll work on that.
I knew you were going to do that.
He's been waiting for 45 minutes to bust that one.
Going to go there.
No, that's what wakes him up at 4 a.m.
Yeah, but
not like solidly strong invention ideas.
But I do have a story on that note. I have to tell this because it was at one of my first trade shows, and I think it was at Midwinter, like the first year I was launching this thing, right? Where it's like prototypes. It was a mess. And I'm showing this doctor, and he's an older guy, and I'm showing him this wedge, but I'm showing him without a matrix band on a Dentec, right? Because with a matrix band in place, you can't see what's going on, right? So I had preps without matrix bands, and I was just pushing these wedges through, and he was like, "Wow, like that's amazing, like this is incredible." And he's like, I'll be back. So then 20 minutes later, he brings his assistant back, and they're like sitting there talking, and he looks at me, and I hear him tell his assistant, "You don't even need a matrix band. You can just push this wedge in there and then just put the filling in." And I'm like, "Oh, no. Like you still need a matrix band. Like
let's back up just a little bit there, fellas.
Maybe don't buy these."
So a really interesting question though, that arises. You've got this product, you've got it produced. Now, how do you figure out where to sell it?
That's a great question. So it's just direct to consumer now. And I've just been kind of patiently waiting the waters and doing a little bit of business and obviously keeping my practice going and things like that. But I can just say this, there's been some movements, and there's more things to come at the end of this year into the beginning of next year. And it's going to be something like no one's seen yet. It's going to be really cool. So,
I love when I ask that, the joy in your face when you just got to say that there's going to be movement towards the end of this year. And, kudos to you, man, because I think that's a lot of our dream, is to be able to push a product that we believe in. And I love that you're able to do that. So that's fantastic. So what else excites you in your practice?
I have a technical question.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Never mind.
Love those.
Can I ask a technical question?
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, so my own ignorance, because to your point, when we were taught in dental school with Toffelmeyers, we didn't even have really access to sectional matrix. I think I found one or two that I could play around with, but it was predominantly just traditional Toffelmeyers. And then one of my faculty members had a copper ring, and I was like, well, I don't even know what to do with this particular thing. So anyway, so we were still operating on a little bit of dated technology. And I graduated about the same time you did. Fast forward, I think there was a big learning gap for me because it wasn't until recently. I've been thinking all this time the wedge is where all the compression comes from, like where all the expansion happened that actually would allow you to create the contact. And I'm asking this question because if I'm just now learning it, I have to think there's some gap in knowledge that a lot of that comes from the ring. And, when you go back to the traditional Toffelmeyer, all the compression did come from the wedge. And then you throw in a sectional matrix. And now all of a sudden we're thinking about how we're setting up ideal contacts and contouring very differently. So can you talk a little bit about what VersaWedge does for compression and what its role is in that particular equation, I guess, and then
Sure.
ring systems that are really idealized to work really well with your wedge?
Yeah. So 2 ring systems that work really well are the Garrison 3D XRs, which they came out maybe like 10 years ago. They had the points on them,
Yep.
So that you can like nestle those in there. They worked really well. And then like the Triodent rings work as well with them, because that was what I was using back when I started venting this. But you said the word ignorance, and it's like, no, it's like, no, we're all figuring this out, right? So I think that there's a lot that's undiscovered into what's actually happening. So if you said something about the amalgam and the compression came from, packing the amalgam in, and I wonder how much it actually did, right? Because if that's true, that when we were pushing it in, it meant that we were pushing it so hard that metal matrix band, that Toffelmeyer, was actually getting thinner. Right. So if we're actually compressing that hard, then we would have to be thinning that metal band, which isn't very likely. Right. It's even when you burnish it, you're not thinning that metal at all. It's more to do with like matrix stabilization and just keeping that thing perfectly still in the area that it has to be in. The advantage we had with amalgam was that we could continue to pack it the whole time wherever we wanted to pack it and keep restabilizing it in these different areas. But with composite, you can't do that. Like that thing's got to be set and done the second you start placing material, because that's where the filling's going to go. And so I think a lot of the thought process is like, oh, we need stronger rings and we need to wedge harder, but it's like, we don't separate the teeth that much, right? It's just keeping everything completely still in that time period. So to your point, my system allows the ring to do its thing, but it keeps the pressure off that piece of tinfoil in there, which is pretty delicate when you think about it, right? So we're putting a whole bunch of force. I don't know if you ever put one of those rings on your finger, but it's not comfortable.
No.
So, you put a piece of tinfoil in there and it's not going to stand a chance. So this helps keep the pressure off of that by engaging the wings, and just stabilizes everything. So no, I mean, we're still definitely learning. I think, there's a lot of assumptions, but I think that we have a ways to go in this area, which is kind of crazy because it's the most common thing done in every dental office every day. Yet when I go, and Troy would say the same thing when he teaches courses like this, like they're always packed. And it's a fundamental part of dentistry, is like, this is the procedure you do on those new patients. This is the number one thing that you do, the most common. And if it goes well, they're patients for life and they're bringing their family. If it doesn't go well, then you never know.
So you
made
did
a
say
great point.
Triodent and
Chad.
Garrison.
The 3D XR from Garrison and Triodent.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I take note of these. Okay.
I was going to say that I think you made a really great point about the fact that there are so many common procedures that we have that we can keep improving. Like, just because it's what we have now doesn't mean it's the best thing out there. And even the most common of procedures, we all struggle with. And that's everyday dentistry. So I appreciate people like you who say, yeah, there's a lot of people out there addressing this, but I think we can make it a little bit easier.
Yep.
And there's always that.
I'm going to tell you a funny story about compression with wedges. And it happens to be a guy who came on our show who was a dear classmate friend of mine. And we had this belief that you had to shove that wedge in, right? Like it had to, because you were doing ontipodonts first and you could actually physically move teeth if you pushed a wedge.
Can we say that's what she said? On show? Is that-
Mark, please edit that out.
It's
Anyway,
our show. We can say whatever the hell we want.
That's
Anyway,
long
so-
past due.
Resist that. Sorry.
we go to clinic and we're on these little operatories, but it's open air above. And all of a sudden, so he comes running out of his operatory and I had heard this like scream, and he comes out crying. He was laughing so hard. He goes, this 90-year-old woman was in his chair. He was doing a Class II Composite. He went to put the wedge in. He was so determined to get the teeth to separate. He was like shoving and shoving and shoving until he finally just cold cocked her across the face. Like it just came, he like right hooked her across the chin because he was pushing so hard. And then she screamed so loud across the thing. Anyway, that is a PSA to say it's not the pressure in the wedge, guys. It's just not.
No, you don't want to go punching 90-year-old ladies.
An old lady.
It's bad for business.
It's not good. Not good.
I am so impressed by your entrepreneurial skills. It says a lot when you've got, I know Troy very well, but it says a lot when you've got people that are out there teaching, that are promoting your system. And I hope that more people will start learning about what you're doing. I would love for you to tomorrow, if you'd be willing to, maybe post something on our group about, your wedge system, and let's bring some knowledge to it as to what's going on, especially if it's direct only. I want to make sure that you get some publicity so that, you can start pushing some of these out there and people can realize how great they are. So
that'd be awesome. And then you guys have to write the check for less, right? For today.
That's
yeah,
right.
actually, I hate to tell you this, but I have a cookie from the booth, and
if you
and he's going to take a 15 blade and cut it at the end, so it splits.
Yeah,
I've got a half a pack of Twizzlers.
Well, they're already open, dude. I love
I've got this
Twizzlers too.
dinosaur.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
I got an empty wine glass, but my wife says that the crystal's worth more than what's in it. So
yeah, I'd be happy.
says the
I'd be
same
happy to put
about
something
you.
up there.
And it's funny. We have 4 of these now. I haven't broken one yet. This is a first.
Impressive.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really
This is a first.
feel like you shouldn't have even said that.
She's probably watching and she knows that that's coming soon, because it's usually like one night after the show where she's like, "Oh, damn it. What was that?" Another wine glass, Ellen.
Now on Twizzlers.
Yeah. 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 Oh, and Siri
We've gone off the rails.
Siri thinks so too. She's good. But yeah, anyhow, so we're coming to the end. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you on. You're a lot of fun, and I love having entrepreneurs in our profession that have found something. And I don't know if you read the description, because StreamYard's doing it a little bit different, but it's like somebody who said, I don't like the way that this is going on and I'm going to change it, and actually is the person that makes the change. So I love it. I think it's amazing. And there's a lot of changes that I want to make, but I'll just be quite frank and tell you, I don't have the balls to do it. So kudos to you for having those. So
Thank you, guys.
And thank you for your passion for dentistry. I think that's what a lot of people see in our program, is that even though, listen, we're all good at some stuff, we're all not good at some stuff, but we love having people on who have a passion for what they do and wanting to make it better. So we appreciate you doing that.
No,
Yeah.
and I appreciate people like you too. You know, it's like that's the best part about all this, hands down, the value, and it's been just the relationships I've formed and the people I've met. Because our profession's like it can be lonely, right? Where if you're working in a solo practice, it's kind of the same thing every day, and it's been very refreshing for sure to meet people like Troy and then bump into you guys and get to do fun stuff like this. So hats off to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining our show, and we'll have you back maybe with a big announcement towards the end of the year.
That'd be so exciting.
Yeah,
Would love that.
We'd love. You know what? Let's just go ahead and say it. We would love to be the avenue that you make that announcement through. So when that comes, if you're looking for a place, call us.
Done. And we'll rock paper scissors for who gets to say it, right?
Yeah. Well, no.
We're
Because
gonna
at
do
that point in
confetti
time, you can
cannons.
just cut us a check.
I have a money gun. I'll just start shooting the money out. We have
See, no one
confetti
told
come
me
out.
about
No,
checks.
we don't
Like,
send
when did these checks start coming?
Well, Jeff, at that meeting, you're going to bring the Twizzlers. I'm going to bring the cookie.
Of a whole box
JB's
of
bringing the
cookies.
dinosaur, and Matt's bringing us a check.
Done.
Okay,
Yeah. All right.
deal.
us a check. We didn't invent anything.
He didn't say for how much.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
No. And
I'm
we'll
bringing the money gun.
We'll
That's
give
what I'm bringing.
we'll give Schmetting his finder's fee.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm. I have his
All right.
finder's fee.
well, thank you very much, Matt, and we appreciate it, man. It's exciting. We're glad that we were able to share a little bit of this journey with you. So
Likewise.
thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Well, we will catch up soon.
Thanks for coming on, Matt.
All right.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All
Hang
right.
tight, buddy.
Hey, I just have to say, you can get us in multiple locations, not just our live show, but we're constantly putting out. And guys, we're bringing out some of our oldies but goodies. Like Bill Robbins dropped this week, and we haven't
I
had
was
that
so
one on our
excited to
podcast
see
channel
that.
yet.
Like,
He's so fantastic.
Yeah.
He's so fantastic. So anyway, we've interviewed some phenomenal folks that just because our budget is so small, we haven't converted them all to podcasts yet. But we're slowly working that way. So we're dropping some really great episodes, and the information is timeless, and our jokes are no better, frankly. So you'll be able to appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
We're always the same.
Or
idiots.
our audio
Yeah.
or video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since this is going down a path of no return. No, folks, with that being said, we'd like to thank everybody for being a part of our community. Once again, listen to us on Facebook, on YouTube, on the podcast, watch the reels on Insta. But one thing that I do want to say is this week, we would be amiss if we did not recognize those that tragically lost their lives this week in Nashville. Our hearts go out to the families and victims of that horrible tragedy. And just thought that we should mention that. So our prayers to everybody that was involved. Other than that, folks, we'll see you next week. And thank you all very much for being a part of our community. Cheers,
Good night.
everybody.
Night.
And that wraps up another podcast for Dentists in the Know. On behalf of Dr. Jennifer Bell, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and myself, remember that we've got a great profession, so let's make it a great day, Dinks.